What is up, everybody? Welcome back to the channel. Today, we are talking about Ableton Live, specifically making music in Ableton Live. If you're just finding this video and some of this is confusing to you or you may not understand a couple things, some of that is explained on the previous video on setup and making the DAW work better for you. But today, we are getting into making music with Ableton Live. Last time we didn't really make anything. We just kind of looked around and got familiar with the layout of everything. Today, we are finally making music, and I'm gonna go through a couple different ways that we make music. Number one, using samples, which is a pretty common usage case. People like Kenny Beats and Andrew Wong do a lot of this sample manipulation style. And number two, we're gonna go through MIDI, how to play out things using VST, pianos, maybe some strings. And I'm gonna break out my beat pad and we're gonna play in a couple beats. And then in the third section, we're gonna go through recording different things, maybe recording vocals, maybe recording some bass guitar or some electric guitar. And we'll kind of touch on each of those as we hit. I'm not gonna spend a ton of time. This is more about getting you guys moving and started making music as quickly as possible. So without further ado, I'm gonna grab one more sip of coffee and we are going to jump right in. Now we're gonna hop into Ableton and we're gonna start by just kind of discussing the drag-in method for samples. From the last video, we set up a samples folder to easily access our samples from our computer inside of Ableton. And I'm just gonna grab one of these samples from one of my cymatics packs. Just gonna grab this one that I think is really, really cool and chill. Drop it on an audio track. Put it on bar 5. I'm actually gonna select it and then hit Command L to activate the loop. So once it hits the end of this section over here, it's just gonna loop it back to the beginning. Simple. And by the way, I'm gonna be using a lot of stuff from the cymatics packs. Some of this stuff is free, some of it I've bought. It's really great. We're probably just gonna be making some chill lo-fi today. They have some really, really great lo-fi toolkit packs that are free. And I would highly suggest going to pick those up. Like I said, some of these I've bought, some of these I got for free from them on their website. So feel free to check all those out. They're really great, especially if you're getting started in like the lo-fi kind of thing, or really any kind of hip hop and pop production. It's super great stuff for free. So we're gonna start with this bar, little 4-bar loop. And if you noticed, when I dropped in this sample, originally our session was 120. So when I dropped in the sample, it automatically reset the timing to be 90 instead of 120, which is super convenient because it gives you a good place to start. Like when I play this, it's at 90, obviously. But if I wanted to change it, I could just go back up here, go to 120. It'll automatically warp it so that if I bring the tempo back up to 120, automatically plays it at 120. I actually really like it at 90 BPM. I do actually, though, want to change this key. Seems a little too bright. I want it to feel a little darker. And also, F is a little weird to play in sometimes on other things that we're gonna do later. So I'm actually going to grab this. We're gonna go to the pitch section, and I want this to be in D. So from F to D is 3 semitones. So I'm just gonna go down 3 semitones. And let's try it in C. So I wanna go down 2 more semitones, down to 5. I actually really like that. As you can see, it handles pitch shifting really, really well in Ableton. I mean, that versus, there's virtually no difference other than obviously the pitch changing. And specifically in lo-fi music, like, it makes it sound a little darker because you're somewhat degrading the sound in an interesting way, but that's kind of cool. at least for this kind of sound. It doesn't always work for everything, and some more complicated loops and samples, it can do some weird stuff too sometimes. So you just kind of have to be careful with it, but I think it's one of the best in the game for this kind of stuff. Another loop that I really like, that I keep in my favorites section in my samples area, is this hi-hat groove that I'm actually gonna drop in on this other audio track. I'm gonna bring it down because it's generally pretty loud. It gives me kind of like a good feel, kind of groove. It lays back really well, really naturally, especially for lo-fi music. Cool. I like that a lot. I think we're going to add snares now. So I'm just going to go up to my MIDI track here. I'm going to hit Command T. It's just going to add another audio track. You could also go to Create, and it's this first one. But as you can see, the command function is right there at the top. Command T. That's just going to create, like I said, create a new audio track. And I'm going to go find a snare. So I'm going to use one of my cymatics packs. Gonna go to Lo-Fi Toolkit. I'm gonna grab a snare somewhere down here. I like that one a lot. But my auditioning is a little loud, so I'm actually gonna turn it down. This blue track down here in the bottom corner actually turns down the volume of any samples that we're auditioning over here on our search and finder window. Turns it down. It also turns down the volume of our click track, which is up here on the top left above that window. These two dots, if it's highlighted, it's on. And that also controls the volume for that. So I'm actually going to turn these down because I'm going to end up turning that on later. Now I'm going to add a snare. We're in this Lo-Fi Toolkits package. I'm going to add a snare. I really like that one. So I'm just going to drop it in, and I'll kind of want it to be, we're going to zoom in here. I zoom in by grabbing this little top area, scrolling down. So I want it to be on every 3, and that snare's a little loud. I'm going to be on every 3, so I'm going to grab it, hit Option, and click and drag, and it's going to copy that sample over. And then if I wanted to do something like detune it, I can double click my sample, brings it up in this sample editor window, and I can drop the pitch. Actually, I think it's cool where it's at. I don't know, maybe that -3 sounded pretty good. I like that -3. So I'm just gonna bring it over here as well. And then you could also do something like raise the gain, quieter, louder, you know, if you wanted to do some like, give it some variation. And then I'm gonna add a little reverb, which is a pretty normal thing for this style of music, having a really like explosive reverb on my snare. So I'm gonna go to my plugins area. I'm gonna grab Valhalla Vintage Verb, which is one of my favorite reverbs. This setting is pretty good on almost everything right out the gate by just tweaking the mix knob. You can basically just tweak the mix knob and tweak the decay, and it's pretty close. I'm going to start with the mix knob at about 20% on my snare, and I'm actually going to, while I'm here, Command R and rename this as snare. And I'm going to go ahead and rename these as well. And there's that verb. Awesome. So now I don't know if I want that verb on there every single time. So something I'm going to do is I'm going to right click this. You could also Command D is duplicate. I'm going to right click this and duplicate that track. I'm going to take the verb off of the second track. I'm going to go down here and just delete where that was. And I only want the verb on the first and the third times. I want the second and fourth to be dry so that the verb hits, and then when the second snare hits, it almost cuts off the verb. So now it'll sound like this. I think that sounds pretty cool. Gives a little bit of variation, so it's not always just explosive verb after explosive verb on the snare every single time. Little bit of ear candy choice there. And then we're gonna go to the kick, and here's where we're gonna talk about a new type of inputting. So we've been working with samples this whole time so far by just dragging them in and kind of working with them in this window right here. I am going to go to my instrument section on where it says categories on the left side. I'm going to go to my instrument section, and I'm going to grab this instrument that Ableton uses called Simpler. Simpler is probably one of the best ways to audition samples in your productions. Just makes it so much easier to find out if the sounds that you're using are the right sounds for what you're trying to go for. Here's what I mean. So I dragged that Simpler plugin in on a MIDI channel. There's no sample in here. It's not going to do anything. I'm going to go to my samples folder in my places area, and we're going to go to find a kick. So that kick 5, drop the sample in there. Now I have this little MIDI controller right here. The Bird Kids Off Grid, a very cool little MIDI controller that I'm going to use to put in some MIDI notes. So I'm just going to turn on my metronome so I have like a sense of the click, and I'm going to hand play in kick notes because specifically in lo-fi, it's all about the feel. So I like my snares to anchor what everything feels like. And then I'm going to have the kicks kind of be a little more manual feeling, a little more hand played, a little rougher, not quite fully on the grid every single time, which is really nice because it gives it that like push and pull, that drag kind of feel. So I'm going to hit record, and I'm going to play this kick in real quick. And now we have our kicks. There's a couple of these I want to change. So I'm going to double click my MIDI region right here, this green MIDI region, double click it, and it'll come up here on the bottom. So I actually want this one to be a little earlier. I think I may have played it a little later than I wanted to. So I'm just going to click it and drag it back. And this one to be a little after. There we go. So yeah, that's the easy way to edit your MIDI. So now that we have our kick pattern in, what we can do now is we can go through and audition every kick sample in real time while it's playing. So for instance, let's say I'm not a huge fan of this kick 5, and I'm not, I kind of want to change it out. So I'm going to hit play. And while this is playing, I'm going to go through and drag different kick samples in. I really like that kick sample number 1. Let's try number 12. A little too fuzzy for me. Let's try number 13. Ooh, it's way too aggressive. That's kind of nice, but I think I like number 1 the most, so I'm just gonna drag it in. As you can see, that was a super easy way to audition different samples so that I don't have to put in the same pattern. I don't have to grab this. I don't have to make a new audio track and then grab this kick sample and drag it in and then, you know, try it out. And if I don't like it, then get the full pattern ready. And then let's say I don't like that one, I have to drag in another sample and erase this and redo the pattern again. This way I can just have one pattern ready to go, done, and then audition what samples that I think are cool, that would make sense for this track, and kind of work a little bit faster. And then let's say after the fact that maybe we find out that kick has too much low end. when we get to like bass and stuff. That will enable us to change the kick out after the fact and not have to go through the whole project and completely have to redo all of our kick placements. So now I'm going to click up here, select this whole region and hit Command D to duplicate everything. And I'm gonna grab our piano melody and I'm gonna Option click that and drag it over. And I'm going to only do the back half of it. And if you can see where these little dots are on each side of this sample, these are the fades. And if you click and drag that, you can kind of manipulate the fade however you want, which is really, really convenient. And I am just gonna have it fade in as almost like an intro to the song that we are making here. So and that'll sound like this. Undo the looping. There we go. I think I want to use a ride. I don't have a great ride sample. What I do have are some drum plugins. So I'm gonna go to my VST area. I'm gonna go to Native Instruments. I'm gonna drag in an instance of Contact onto this MIDI track. And then I'm gonna bring up one of my favorite kits, this Bo Burchell Signature Drum Series kit by Room Sound. It's just got some good cymbal sounds, and I'm just gonna load up this all 0 preset because I only really need it for the ride. So that's what I'm looking for there. So I'm gonna go here, and this back half, I'm just gonna give us a little bit of a ride. I'm going to make a selection here just by clicking and dragging an area, kind of select an area. I'm gonna right click on it, and then I'm gonna insert an empty MIDI clip. You could also Shift Command M, insert a blank MIDI clip in that area that's already looped and everything. I want it to just be 1, 2, 3, 4. So I'm gonna go on the 1, 2, and then the 3, and then the 4. I'm gonna drag that all the way across like so. But I don't know if you noticed, but I'm not hearing anything. I don't know what this sound is. It's nothing actually right now. So what I wanna do is I'm gonna go to this little area right here where it's got a headphone thing on it, and I click that, and that'll let me hear on the piano roll. So I can click. So that's where I need to be. So I can also add crashes here if I wanted to. And I'm going to use the velocity thing here. I'm going to select this hit and I'm going to bring it down a little bit. I don't want it to be super loud. Kind of want it to be a little bit of a softer hit. Gives it kind of a good, more realistic kit feel. So that's a way to use a contact instrument. Let's go and start doing, I don't know, let's add another keyboard. I like this one that's in our loop. But I kind of want maybe something a little lower, or just maybe something to fill out the space a little bit more. So I'm gonna grab my Lumi keyboard real quick. It's a wireless MPE compatible keyboard, and I'm just gonna plug that in, and I'm going to add Command Shift T again to add another MIDI track. And I'm gonna use something from Spitfire Audio called Labs, and it is a free mind you plugin. And I love this soft piano on here. It's great, great stuff. I'm gonna turn up the reverb right there, turn up some of the sensitivity right here. It just sounds so good. Let's figure out what chords we're playing now. So we're just going C major 7 to G major 7. And I kind of like where that is, kind of lower. Let's hear how this sounds together and let's test this out. So I actually think I want it to be higher. So I'm going to go up the octave on that a little bit, see how that sounds, test that out. So I just think I want to have it do a little like light arpeggio thing on the top there. So let's play that in real quick. Cool. And I messed up a couple times, so let's go in and edit that. I'm going to trim these ends off. And I'm going to click Command A, which is going to select all of the MIDI notes in this region. And I'm going to Command U, which is going to quantize them to the grid that I have set right now, which should be a 16th note grid, which is fine for what I need. So now let's go through and pick which notes I need to fix. I know that is just a soft hit from my finger being jittery. Here's a secondary hit on accident. So there I messed up a little bit. I'm gonna raise that up to a G, boom. And I was outlining a G7 chord. So let's elongate these a little bit. That sounds super cool. I do think in the second time we go to that C7 chord, I want it to go up to the C, to the half step, and then come back down. So I want it to go dun, 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 dun. Dun, dun, dun. Let's half all that timing on that. Very cool. So let's put that only where the symbol comes in, the ride symbol comes in. Bring it down a little bit. Let's add a little bit more to it. I want to chorus it a little bit, I think. Let's use this free towel chorus. Turn off this metronome. Kind of gives it a width and kind of moves it from side to side a little bit, which I think is super cool. Gives it some width, gives it some movement, gets it out of the way of the center, and lets the two pianos kind of live together. We'll call this lead piano. Now, I'm going to duplicate this section because I want to add more layers as we get into this. So we're going to add a little bit of bass guitar. I'm going to grab my bass guitar. Got my bass plugged in. Going to open a new audio track here. Gonna hit auto so we can hear it now. Gonna turn it down a little bit because it's gonna be a little loud. I'm gonna name it bass. And I'm gonna add one of my favorite plugins for bass, the Neural DSP Dark Glass plugin. And I'm actually gonna use one of these presets that I actually really like for my bass specifically. So now I'm also going to add, I don't know if you knew this, but if you go into audio effects, into utilities, we actually have a tuner in here that you can see live. Let's track a little bit of bass when these keys in that ride come in. There's a good little bass line for me to use. You just got to make sure that your track is armed, that little red dot on the right side there, and everything should work out pretty easily. For the last thing, I think I'm going to add a little bit of guitar. I already know what I'm going to want on it even before I grab my guitar. I'm going to use Guitar Rig 5. I really like this mid-lead preset because it does something really nice to this AC-130. Then I'm also going to throw on, once again, Valhalla Vintage Verb, toss it back at 20%. So I got my guitar plugged in directly into my interface. I'm gonna arm the track, guitar right here, make sure it's on auto. Kind of want a tuner on this just to double check and make sure that I'm good. So I'm gonna grab this tuner, drop it before my guitar and tune up. I think I'm gonna add a little bit of bluesy jazz kind of feel over the top of this as a lead. We'll do a little bit of arranging, maybe a little bit of mixing. Maybe we'll put this out or something. So that's what it looks like to create music in Ableton Live. Just a little bit of a simple walkthrough. If there's anywhere that you really want me to deep dive in, drop it in the comments and let me know what you'd like to learn. If there's anything that really helped you or maybe something that I missed, let me know. Feel free to give this video a like if you got something out of it. Feel free to share it with somebody you think may enjoy it. And I will see you next time.